Well, why don't we get started? So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to our session called AI is a Change Journey. My name is Tim Morton. I'm the president of Prompt AI, and my pronouns are he, him. And I'm thrilled to be with you today as we guide this important conversation on how AI can transform your organization's approach to change management and employee engagement, and how the success of AI within organizations comes down to how effectively it integrates our human-centered approach to AI adoption. So, 5 years ago, when I started talking about AI for change and transformation and about prompt to AI in our first application, people looked at me like I had two heads as I tried to explain, oh, here's what AI is, and here's how we understand the sentiment and make decisions. And, as we know, the last year or so, everything has changed. So I'm really honored today to have Rhonda St. Croix with me. Rhonda is a change management and change leader extraordinaire, and is currently the acting executive director of Learning and Connecting. We're in good hands with Rhonda today, and I'm thrilled to have Rhonda here to share insights with us today. Welcome, Rhonda. Thanks for joining us, and please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Tim. It's an honor to be here, and hello to everyone. So maybe I'll just say, and my pronouns are she, her. And as you said, I'm the acting executive director. I work at an organization called the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons right now. And so we're in medical education, so all kinds of disruption happening in healthcare. And so my job is to really help guide the changes that are happening with our membership and our learning for physicians in particular. And so AI is certainly factoring into that. But maybe I'll also tell you that I've been privileged to have quite a diverse career in different sectors. I've been in this current sector for about 10 years. My career seems to go in 10-year chunks. So I started my career in telecommunications, and then I spent about another 10 years in environmental not-for-profits. So the constant theme for all of that has been leading change. And I tend to rotate. Right now, I'm in a more formal leadership role. I tend to spend time doing that, and then I'll often go and become a change coach, change specialist. So, and I'm also, I should say, very passionate about the future of work, which has got me interested in AI. And from the view of leadership and change, I feel like I'm a bit of an imposter. I'm certainly no AI expert, just very much of a learner. And really, I think, worry about overwhelm in our workplaces and well-being, and just the challenge of leading through all of this disruption. So really passionate about how we go about that for good and to create great workplace experiences and great results for our customers.
Thanks, Rhonda. And for those joining us today for this meeting, thanks for joining us. And if you've got questions as we're going through, we'd love if you could share them in the chat. We're going to have a few polls and a few questions as we go, but we're going to save some time at the end. So with that, before we jump into the questions, we have a poll for the audience. So Leanne, if you're able to launch the poll. And our first poll today is, how often do you currently use generative AI applications? And we'll give people a few moments to share their thought. And it could be, there's so many different applications out there, so it could be a variety, but we'd love to hear from you. So please select that radio button if you're able.
Starting to see the results. So that's interesting. Yeah, lots of folks using it pretty regularly.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Indeed, and it really is. It is. It is interesting to see, and yeah, we've got. I think we can close the poll, but we've got we really do have a variety with just over a third that are using daily, and close to close to 20% that are using it multiple times a day, and about another 20% around, around that monthly basis. So, and
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing within organizations as well. So,
Mhm.
well, why don't we jump into the discussion? And that first question I've got today is, Rhonda, from your perspective, what do you find are the most common misconceptions leaders have about
Mhm.
enabling or implementing enablers like AI from a change management perspective?
Yeah, that's great. I've been thinking a lot about that, Tim. And I would say like the first misconception is probably around seeing it as just about AI and something that we can, outsource or leave to the tech experts. And I've really been noticing how I think we're kind of forgetting that it is a leadership challenge and it needs leadership. It needs leadership to bring that business perspective and, ask the questions of, what is this? Why is it meaningful? How can it help me achieve my business goals? So I think that's the first thing. And probably also like and related, I suppose, but the need to kind of shape it, influence it. And I kind of noticed, and I was guilty of this initially, it was, oh my God, we're behind, we're behind. So this real sense of urgency, which can lead us to making some bad decisions, again, if we're not grounding it in our business goals. But the other side I noticed is that we're kind of waiting for permission or waiting for clarity and like not getting started to start to learn about it and shape it and bring that good leadership approach to it. And I think the other thing I often hear a lot actually around, the reasons for it. So almost like bringing machine-like thinking to it, where again, it's going to eliminate, 40% of jobs. And there's certainly a lot of rhetoric about that, but forgetting again that it's not just about the technology, it's about the human-like thinking of, again, how are we going to use it? How is it going to serve us? How can it make our jobs better? How can it make us achieve our goals and kind of eliminate the more, mundane and repetitive tasks and truly, be that, I would say, supportive coworker who can we can approach it in that way as opposed to like a threat of something that it's going to eliminate our jobs and cause a lot of harm. So I think those are some of the key and probably the other thing is the skills, and hopefully we'll get into that. But I think, we can spend a lot of time investing in the digital skills, which of course we need, but we also need to, I think, invest in the human skills and not forget that part when we're budgeting to make sure we are growing our capacity, our human capacity to work with AI and to do it well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and we're already seeing all of these examples within organizations where they've jumped in, and they haven't engaged people, they haven't understood uh, business needs and business wants, and we're seeing examples of these just not being successful
Yeah,
yet.
totally. I think I'm reading, I would highly recommend this book, by the way. I was going to mention it at some point, but it's called The AI Savvy Leader. And he gives a lot, it's really well referenced book, but he gives a lot of examples of like the big, we hear about change projects failing. And so it's kind of continuing on that path with 2/3 or more of these projects failing when we get going too fast and forget to ground it in the human-centered approach and in the business goals. So I think that's a big
Indeed.
caution.
Is it ever? Is it ever?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna look. I'm gonna look at that book as well
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah.
So thank you, uh, Leanne. Let's uh, let's put up another poll if we can. And this one, we want to know from you: is your organization currently undergoing or planning an AI implementation or AI transformation? and uh, and we'll give it a moment for people to add their selections, and then we'll look to close it. But and we see that the poll's not working for everyone, so thank you if
Oh,
it's not, for putting it in the chat. But for those that are, it looks like it's fairly close to a 50-50 split. So that's great. Actually, it's more of a 60-40 split with yes
right.
from a planning perspective.
Yeah.
And some that currently are underway. So again, I think that's absolutely fascinating. So, and what we'd love to ask to the audience right now, and just get some thoughts. So, you know, one of the things that we wanted to ask is, for those that are currently undergoing an AI implementation or transformation, what do you see as the biggest challenges or opportunities at this time? So if you could, I know Leanne's going to type it, put that question into the chat, but um, if you're able to, let us know, what are some of those biggest challenges or biggest opportunities you're currently seeing from your organization's AI implementation or AI transformation. Yeah, and I see the I see the a challenge there being change management, of course,
Mhm.
and Julian, that's such a key one, because so often I think what we do see is that idea of, hey, this is technology and it's good for us, but if we don't involve people, I think that's such a key one. And I see technology adoption, becoming efficient, buy-in. So I think that's really just so spot on to to what we've been seeing and experiencing. So just building building on that, you know Rhonda, what do you see, what do you think organizations can do to ensure that AI initiatives remain people centric, particularly when
Mhm.
it comes to addressing employee fears and concerns? And even from that last question, we saw this is all employee centric, about engagement, involvement, and
Totally.
training and buy-in. So what
Yeah.
can organizations do to keep people um, keep people engaged and make sure that these are people centric approaches?
Yeah, I love that question. And hi to some of my colleagues. I saw their names pop up in the chat. Great to see you on here. So yeah, I think maybe two things, Tim, that I would mention. One is, again, starting with that intention and getting really clear that, this is not about AI. AI is the tool. This is really about people. So putting humans first and really, getting clear on our reasons to adopt AI. And it really, it should be about improving our work life experiences, and again, seeing AI as that supportive new coworker who can help us, as opposed to the big bad threat that's going to take away our jobs. But really being intentional about why we're looking at AI, why we're, putting our strategies and frameworks in place, and not just sort of keeping it at the senior leadership level. It's important that senior leaders be involved, as I mentioned, in leading the way and shaping it. But I think really involving, our team members and our staff, because they're often the ones who understand the business and they're close to the action and can see what's needed. And I think by involving people and helping them to have a role and see, again, what kind of repetitive tasks could be eliminated, and where do you see AI helping you go from 0 to 50 so you can do that human value add work. But really being transparent about that and inclusive about it and setting that clear intention. I think there's also a bit of some people feel like this is gonna, some of my kids who are close to 30, their friends, in the workforce are kind of thinking we all need to be more machine-like. And so I've heard some of them say we won't need to have the so-called soft skills, which I think is another misconception, but really making sure that we are developing and growing and practicing those good human skills of teamwork and empathy and, the things that make our teams gel. But I think that the change process is critical, like to not forget that this is another change, and we need to have the discipline to architect it as a really robust human-centered change process with all the things we normally do, which is set the goals and envision the future we want and involving people in that to make it meaningful. And then really having those great strategies, which we know, I mean, those are the well-known methods of change, to start with empathy and involve people along the way and help, keep communicating it and being transparent about why we're doing doing it, how it's going, what we're learning. And I think really important to adapt. If there was ever a time to bring that experimentation and adaptability and adaptive approaches, it's now, especially as these tools are so rapidly evolving. And I think also, I know, Tim, this is your area of expertise, but using AI for change and really being able to collect that really meaningful data to reflect what people are really thinking and experiencing. So I think there's a big role for that as well.
Yeah, and you know what? It's fascinating when we actually understand the sentiment of
Right.
people that are going to go through a change. What are they fearful of? What do they need? What do they want? What's important? And also
Yeah.
being able to segment that
Yeah.
AI data and to be able to understand what specific elements that people and teams need in order to get prepared. And it really has become it's become just a different way of managing change with better tools and better insights.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And and one of the things we're seeing, and you touched a little bit about this, some of the fears and anxieties and people feeling overworked, because one of the things we're seeing is survey after survey where, and this isn't just a Canadian thing or US thing, we're actually seeing it in other parts of the world. We just saw it in surveys out of Mexico too, that over 40% of the workforce at any given time is burnt out. And just given that, and it seems to, it seems to be increasing since COVID, but
Yeah.
how do you think AI can be utilized to create more supportive and a less stressful work environment for people?
Yeah, I love that question. Well, I think, Tim, just as you said, seen that those data points too about the amount of burnout. But I think even just starting there to remember that and not dismiss that, because I think that's important to realize we're already starting from a point of overwhelm and, at the extreme burnout. So I think that's where compassionate leadership really is required. So we just can't view this as a tech change. We have to see it as a human journey. So I would say, again, going back to the intention that, in a burnt out workforce, you kind of want to, we realize people need more capacity. And, there's an opportunity to use AI for good to improve the work experience and kind of, again, take away some of the repetitive, not so enjoyable tasks that can more easily be augmented or automated by AI. And then kind of free people up, again, with their involvement to do what would be, folks would be most proud of and would add more value to help us achieve our strategic goals. So I think that's certainly a key part of it. And enlisting, again, with that good, robust change process that's human centered to really give people that control. Because I think, in burnout and overwhelm, we kind of are looking for that sense of control and autonomy and, more able to meet our human needs. So I think it's a great opportunity to be able to involve people in that. And as you say, be checking in and getting the feedback and the sentiment and kind of responding to that, really, actioning it in our change processes. And I think, again, the experimentation is so important because that's going to get people involved, help us learn, but also build trust and hopefully take away the fear. I think most times, at least my experience in change processes, when people are able to try things, even in bite-sized ways, it can really dispel some of the fears and, build trust and confidence in the way forward. And I think, and you probably know more about this than I do, but the ability to use AI to collect some of the well-being data, I think would be really important. I think every workplace that I know of is really prioritizing mental health and well-being. So to kind of use some of these tools for good to help us see the picture more clearly and more timely, in a more timely way would be really helpful as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of teams, in the past they were doing activities like start, stop, and continue, and now it's start, stop, continue, and automate with AI. So what is it thinking through as a team? What can we start to do? And with that, you could end up being a lifeline to some of your people that are
Mhm.
suffering burnout if we can free up free up
Yeah,
some manual tasks.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I wanted to move to another quick question for the audience, and I'm sure Leanne's going to put this into the chat, but our question is, from a change management perspective, what aspects of managing AI-driven change feels similar to managing other types of change and transformation? And Leanne's put that in the chat for us. Thank you, Leanne.
It's a great question. Eager to hear what people have to say.
Yeah, I think that is, I think that's, we just saw one here. Unknowns are too much. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is that importance of understanding the sentiment of people and what they need and want, and then to be able to develop change specific tactics and plans in order to support them where they are having that current understanding. So
Yeah, well said.
yeah, and I think that's it too. Another one, managing fears of employees. Of course, it is so important that we understand. We can understand and then empathize and really try and get ahead of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just Leanne, if you could post this one in the in the chat too. Just one more question. It's really the flip side. So what do you see as the unique challenges or differences in managing AI-driven change compared to other transformations? And for us, one of the things, as people are typing, one of the things that we've seen is the lack of a playbook. The lack of a playbook, or people not knowing what they don't know. Yeah, I think that's a great one. Managing the IP risk of using public platforms, and I think ethical guidelines, privacy. I think those are all paramount. And one of the things that we've started to see is where companies aren't addressing it or aren't even thinking about this. We're seeing employees bringing their own AI to work, and that's the bigger risk, where somebody might trying to get ahead of their job actually put something on a public AI platform, which is causing more risk to the organization. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's important to get those, what we are going to use it for and what we're not, and really be clear about those guardrails just to avoid that risk that you're talking about, because people are resourceful and they will find a way to use the tools.
Yeah, indeed. These are all great. These are all absolutely great. And I see one around data availability. I see something about collaboration and breaking of silos and cultural changes. So thank you. These are awesome. I want to move to the next question, and just even from a leadership perspective, what key leadership skills do you believe are most critical for successfully guiding teams through AI transformation efforts?
I have to tell you, I was thinking about this question recently, so I actually asked ChatGPT and was really pleasantly surprised with the wise answer that it gave. And so it really, I think, is about, as ChatGPT reflected too, it is a leadership challenge. And so it is about, what I would call those leadership fundamentals, starting again from the business perspective, whatever our business is, and really kind of getting on the balcony, asking those really crucial questions that help us understand and remember what our own strategy and goals are. I think that's really important. And as other people have reflected, with the people challenge and the fears and the overwhelm, I think it's really important to remember what doesn't change. I also really see that as leaders' role, to be really clear. Starting that at the beginning of any change process is really helpful, because what's not likely going to change is our purpose and the essential work that matters most to people. We know that human nature doesn't really change. So just getting really clear on some solid ground and as a way to kind of guide us. And then I think the change leadership skills are crucial. And maybe not just the change leadership skills, Tim, I think that's a must, but I think also change literacy. Like I've certainly seen over the years, we keep talking about the need to, I guess the sense that we are in not just episodic changes anymore, but we're in this continuous disruption and change. And I think more than ever now that's coming true. So really helping folks build the change literacy and comfort that, we need to embrace this new way of the world, and that change is a force to be managed continuously. And so again, we need the leadership to really do that well, and be able to set the solid ground, but also the adaptive way forwards. I think that's really key. We've talked about the communication, like starting from a place of empathy and understanding, including people, seeking input and feedback, and really being transparent about our purpose and our processes. And I think balancing, there's so much, depending if you follow polarity management but right now there's so much to balance. I think with AI, it's, the efficiency and productivity, which of course is important, with, again, the humanity and the human experience. The control, as somebody mentioned, the concern about privacy, and that we certainly have to have the control in place, but we also need to have the adaptability and the experimentation. So it just strikes me that the leader's role is going to be really focused on creating that environment which balances some of these tensions and still helps us move forward in a really smart way to include people and adapt and still be able to achieve our goals with these new tools. And I think learning is going to be is sort of the new superpower, where I think whether we realize it or not, regardless of our job titles and roles, we are all in a learning role now, and kind of, our leadership needs to really, again, set those conditions and the culture to enable that. And probably the last thing would be not to forget the soft skills. Again, it's not just the tech and the digital skills, which are important, but remembering to practice and coach and invest in the human skills that are going to help us work well together and be successful in these projects and these ways of working. Just a few
Indeed,
little
indeed.
things.
And so even when you said even when you're saying, the importance of understanding that what's changing and what's not changing, I think the
Yeah,
what's not changing is so important, because, there's times that people can feel like everything is shifting, but it's good to
exactly.
be grounded in some of those things that, hey, what, we're not changing this. This is still going to be,
Yeah,
this is still going to be key. So I think that's
right.
that's a
Yeah.
that's certainly a good one. And
Think of
so
having the anchors, right, that we're going to be able to hold on to. Yeah.
yeah. And then again, from a leadership perspective, how can leaders balance AI driven efficiency with maintaining that human touch on, the day-to-day
Mhm.
operations?
Yeah, I mean, I think this honestly is one of the main roles in the leader's domain, right? Is to be able to bring that balance that we were talking about earlier. But and it starts with, again, the compassion and the understanding of where people are at, right? Where in the world we're in, people are generally either on some spectrum of dysregulated, overwhelmed, and all the way to burnout. So just being able to understand that and have compassion for it and know how to work with people in that way, which I think requires more high touch and more, seeking input and working with people and understanding and getting folks involved. So I do think that's really important. I think the human touch is often achieved by really being clear again on what matters to people. Because for most people, I think AI will just be a means to an end. It's not going to be something that most people are super passionate about. But what they're passionate about is the main goals and the things we get up in the morning. So really making sure we're always linking it to what matters most, with our worthy goals. I think constructing that really human-centered change journey, so not forgetting our change skills and tools, will be really important to establish that human centered approach and human touch. And I think also thinking about, how we engage all of our, we don't call them stakeholders anymore at the college because it's colonial roots, but I call them now interest holders. But really thinking about not just our staff and our customers, but I think all our interest holders, and particularly society. I think, I've been thinking a lot about this, and somebody mentioned it in the chat, the ethical, because for me, the ethical, it's not just about security and privacy. It's about what's good for society. And I think about social media. my daughter was just hitting the teen years when social media like Instagram and those things came out. And we know now, 10 or more years on, how damaging that was to people's mental health. And so I think we all, like, we're very adaptive as humans, but I think we can also be very maladaptive. And sometimes it takes a while to see the harm in some of the things. So I think as leaders and, people in workplaces who care about this, we all need to be paying attention and kind of watching for the blind spots and the things that we normalize, and really making sure that we're doing it again for the right reasons to achieve our true worthy goals, and not to achieve, there likely will be like implications and things we need to manage. But I think to really have our eyes open on that will be really important and a key part of making it again good for humans.
Yeah. And even for leaders, um, the understanding of culture is shifting so much. So, you know, I think we've all seen that that iceberg, and the 10% that's above and the 90% of culture that's below. And one of the things that we're seeing with AI and understanding sentiment is we're seeing that 90% that's below the water. And as we start to see that, and as
Yeah,
that all comes to life, this previously hidden element, we are going to have to start to give leaders new skills, new tools, new
exactly.
capabilities, and even new ways of managing their people with this new data.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's exactly how we're going to achieve, right, more human-centered workplaces. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And just you know, um, when you think about this whole journey, uh, do you think it's important that we allow employees to experiment with AI solutions? And if so, how can organizations and leaders encourage this exploration of AI?
Yeah, I think that we touched on that a little bit already, but yes,
Yeah,
I think again, in a given the time we're in, we're thinking with these tools in particular are just so much in flux and so rapidly evolving that, again, if there was ever a time for experimentation, that's it. So we really, to me, that is the best match for, creating an AI strategy, is to make sure we do it in a very flexible and experimentative and adaptive way, which can only be done through involving people. So I think, as we said, people are going to use these tools right there, and we can't fully anticipate how they're going to use it, and we can't control it all. So I think having people involved in these experiments will be a really important way of kind of managing it and staying on top of it, but also get like kind of doing the part of the change journey is to get people's buy-in and reduce the fear, and really help people learn. And I think, again, from I think an experimentation perspective, if people start working on it, usually the first results are not the best or the only ones. So that's kind of the only way, if we use them and try them out, that we can kind of figure out what does work and what we need to change. So I think it really is imperative that we take on that more adaptive approach, and kind of find the sweet spot between, again, our goals and how people are going to be able to have the freedom and the space, I guess, to use these tools in creative ways that we need them to.
yeah,
So yeah, I really do think creating cultures of experimentation are, and we've
yeah.
talked about adaptive leadership for a very long time, but I think this is really a great use case for it to become more scalable.
Yeah, and how do you think they can balance that need for experimentation and the need to have controls and security in place?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on that as well,
Yeah,
but I think having the guardrails,
yeah,
and like, first of all, maybe having the intention to find that sweet spot. It's
yeah,
never going to be fully controllable, but I think getting really clear on what we won't do and
yeah.
what we maybe can't or shouldn't do. An organization that I know of here in Ottawa, they were telling me they've made a decision that, like, their only framework is that you cannot use it to make decisions. So depending on your organization, that
Mm,
wouldn't work in our organization. It's far too complex with, high stakes information. But I think depending on your context, getting really clear on, what we absolutely won't do. And so setting those guardrails so people know, how they can experiment and what can be
yeah,
done. But
yeah.
yeah, I think that's
And
really
and I think one of the things that we're seeing too is the idea too of let's do some pilots. let's
Right.
involve, let's make sure that this isn't just, IT or IS. This is, this is joint collaboration, cross-functional, but we're getting the business involved, and we've got pilots, and really taking those learnings from those pilots, but making sure too that we're not missing, we're not missing that human element.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think what you said earlier, that if we don't do that, like set the guardrails and declare what we won't do, we risk probably more because people will start to use it and then probably do things that are quite harmful for privacy and security. So, yeah. I
Indeed,
think
indeed.
it's-
and
Yeah.
and then if we think about, uh, evolving roles and skills, how do you believe organizations should approach redefining these roles and responsibilities to integrate AI without overwhelming their people?
Mm. Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, in fact, I think it was in the AI Savvy Leader that he had a case study about this, where an organization had kind of prioritized the tech investment for AI, for their AI strategy, but didn't leave any budget to look at, the workforce and the job design and looking at the roles and responsibilities. So I would say the first thing is to make sure that we kind of obviously have to prioritize our tech investment, but make sure we push up close to that, if not before that, the job enrichment and looking at our job design and where our workforce is at. So I think that's really, really important that we invest in it. And really, in fact, and there's another book I would recommend. Some folks have maybe read it because it's been around for a little while, but it's called The Digital Mindset by Paul Leonardi. And he has a framework in there that actually speaks to this, like how you go about redefining roles and responsibilities. He calls it the STEP framework. I don't actually remember what it all stands for, but it was a very systematic approach to this. So I would encourage people to look for that. But he really did talk about, again, taking a look at the roles that we have in place, where the opportunities are involving our people as to what's repetitive, what could use some AI support. And I think the organizations that do that and involve people are far more successful in adoption and sustainability. So with the aim, again, to be clear, we're trying to create more human and, supportive jobs for people and to create better work experiences. So I think, again, involving people in that, really enlisting them to identify where the opportunities are, asking the good questions, providing the opportunities for growth and learning. I think we'll need to, again, not just prioritize budget for workforce redesign and job redesign, but also for learning for people. Yeah, and so I think those some of the things that come to
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
And for me, as you were talking, one of the things is, this, I think it's so key that this be seen as a business enabler or
Mm,
business project with an IT enabler. But it
exactly.
really is about transforming your business, transforming your ways of working, transforming uh,
Yeah.
your ways of operating, and your culture.
Yeah.
And we've seen that before, this whole prioritizing of tech. And yeah,
Mhm.
the tech is great, but and we know tech can work, but
Yeah.
we need to make it work for, for the business. And one of the things, and you've likely seen this too, oh, this change is good, this change is good, people will just embrace it.
Right.
And we know as humans, that's that's just not gonna happen without taking people on that
Mm,
effective change journey. So
yeah.
um, and
Right.
and quite often we see that number, needs to be, 15 or 20% that's allocated for people and culture. And just, if
Mhm.
it's always so easy to cut, and it seems like the cut ends up being on the soft stuff, the change or the training or the
Right.
engagement. And
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
tough one.
Totally. I love that because, yeah, if it's surprising, as you say, we're kind of repeating it, these lessons. That's why I was surprised to see that we're still doing that according to some of the studies that that book, the AI Savvy Leader, presented. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because it's just, again, it's it's not necessarily that partnership between IT and the business, and we're seeing that CIOs are becoming increasingly, increasingly important within organizations. But I think as well, making sure that they're connected and engaged and a key member with business leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
And just just thinking as we think about implementation, so what strategies can we put in place to ensure employees at all levels are equipped with the right skills to succeed in these environments that are AI
Mhm.
enabled?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is kind of, matching that to the future of work. Again, unique for our organizations, but if we can understand, and it won't be perfect because we'll have to make sense of things, read the data points that are available to us and make sense of it and kind of, make a bet on what the future of our workplace will look like. And once we're clear, I think, on those goals, then we can sort of decide, okay, well, what does that mean for the future of our skills and for our learning? Approach. So I really think making that connection is super important to be strategic. And so, yeah, to me, like the world of work is changing rapidly, and these new tools are available to us. It will definitely accelerate the need for learning. That's why I was saying that I think, learning is the new superpower if it isn't already, and it really is. We're all in a learning role, whether it's in our title or not. So I think that's the first thing. And I was talking to someone yesterday and she was telling me how she's in a research organization, how she's using some of these tools. But it was really listening to her, I was saying, it sounds like you're shifting from being that sort of expert creator, contributor to almost this high level editor, supervisor of the work, right? So I think, it just understanding that's unique to her role, but everybody will have probably a similar analysis that needs to be done for their own role and how they use these tools. But I think just getting clear on what the differences will be and what that means for our jobs and therefore the skills that will support us in doing those jobs. So I think that's really important. And I think, again, as we said, like, change will still happen. What's that saying, at the pace of trust or at the pace of relationship? So I don't think that's going to change. So making sure we continue to practice and invest in where needed, those human skills of, compassion and trust and collaboration and communication and being transparent. So I really think, and kind of having a culture of coaching and practicing that is really important. Because I really worry when I hear folks say that, oh, we're going to be soft skills will be less important in the future. We just all need to have, digital or AI skills. So I think really, turning that around and making sure we don't go there. And then I would say it's going to be hard to predict. I think we can see clearly for maybe the next leg of the journey in the short term, but I think so the key for skills and learning will be realizing that it is a journey, because it's often seen as a destination. We get the credential or we get the degree or whatever, but I really think that we're going to need to understand that learning will be more personalized. We'll always obviously have degree programs and credentials, but we'll need to think about the more personalized, just in time, again, supportive parts of learning that really help us be more adaptive and nimble and, in particular to use these tools. So I do think we'll be looking at learning more as a continuous journey versus a destination, which will be an
Yeah,
important approach to how we think about, skill building and learning and
yeah,
development and so on. Yeah.
indeed. And one of the things that we're really seeing is the need for uh, people managers to really understand again what's happening with their team, what's changed from their role, from their accountability,
Yeah.
in their ways of working, even what their people are getting measured on. Because if
Right.
some of those manual tasks have gone away, they may be being measured on things that aren't even within their performance plan. And I think
Yeah.
people managers working with HR specialists and even just being tied to what is
Yeah.
that vision for the team and how we're going to work going forward is just so essential.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think we're ready for some questions from the audience. So if you've got questions for Rhonda or for myself or both of us, please do put them in the chat. And Leanne, are there any questions that we've received so far that that you'd like to bring to our attention?
I haven't seen any questions yet.
Okay, so if there are questions, please do please do share them. And while people are typing, Rhonda, is there any anything that you know that's come to your mind that we haven't touched on yet around this you know, around this topic?
Well, Tim, I want to interview you because you've got such a wealth of experience in using AI for change. So yeah, what about like, what would you add that's missing from the conversation, or things that you've learned from your experience that you want folks to know?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the, you know, one of the biggest thing is we need to create trust. So we need to break down fears and create trust. And one of the things that we've been seeing is, you know, in certain organizations, when we start to ask people for their lived experience or their sentiment, or you know, what they'd like to share, and we tell them that it's anonymous, we need to make sure it is, and we need to find ways to make sure it is. But we also need to explain why we're asking. So, you know, we had one organization where uh, 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 people were so leery of sharing their lived experience, and then um, one person had said, you know, for the last 20 years, nobody's wanted to know. We've
Yeah.
just gone through these tick the box approaches, and nothing ever changes. And now you want to understand about how I'm feeling, you know, how I'm feeling even from, you know, from an intersectionality perspective, or, you know, how I'm feeling about what my fears are, what I want addressed. And that's been a big thing. So I think it's changing some of the conversations, but starting to build as well. You know, we've seen that the importance of pilots, the importance of involving people, of having change networks across, so that people see that their peers involved and engaged. I think that's really been one of the big things that we've seen as well.
Yeah. Sounds great. Yeah.
And I think even changing some of the mindsets for leaders, and that's been really essential here as well. One of the first things, of course, leaders are going through this change as well, and they don't know what they don't know, but providing them with some tools on, you know, how to successfully lead this type of transformation, understanding what their role and what their accountability is, helping them to support their people in how these new data and insights are going to be used across the organization is essential.
Yeah.
And having, you know, the other thing we're seeing is that importance of having transparent communications, or as transparent as possible, because without that, and if we don't have that trust, and people are fearful about, you know, about what's happening. The other thing we're seeing too is there's a lot of apprehension, you know, out there around, you know, fear of losing, you know, fear of losing my job, or fear of getting replaced, or, you know, and I think one of the keys for people is getting involved and engaged and being part of this, and not allowing themselves to sit on the sidelines. And, you know, it's easy to be afraid of something new, but I think being involved and engaged and being, you know, being a leader within change is going to be you know, great. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I think, as you said, there's so much fear, and of course the headlines don't help. You cannot kind of open any, you know, piece where there's not predictions about the number of jobs that are going to be replaced. And I don't know. I mean, we've, you know, when you look back at past historic changes like the computer and the internet, and before that the steam engine, you know, we always, of course, make a lot of changes in the composition of our workforce and the skills, but we humans usually find value add things to do. We haven't had mass displacements of people. So I think this is probably no different, but we do need to be really intentional about what we are planning to do with it and share that openly to try to, eliminate as much fear as we can. Because we know that we can't do our best work if we're threatened and under fear. So I think
Yeah.
the more trust we can build. Yeah, and I really like what you're saying about collecting that data and making it safe for people to reflect what they're really thinking and feeling.
And I think also protecting that data and protecting that access. And one of the things that's been so essential for us is um, AI can be leveraged to understand what the biggest themes are.
Mhm.
What do people within a team or within an area, what
Mm.
are the biggest themes about what they need and what they want and what's important? And getting to that without bias, because,
Yeah.
not human bias. Of course, we know that there's still some level of bias baked in, but getting rid of some of that human bias that we've got, but and just seeing what those biggest themes are. So we do have a question. So I see it's with the ethical concerns about the environmental, human, social impact of AI. How would companies and people support technological advancement while prioritizing ethics and ensuring responsible use?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think there's an easy answer to that. And we were kind of circling around this earlier, but I do think it's like where we start from, getting really clear on what we are committed to, like what our position is on not just the security and the privacy, that's super important. If we have environmental, social, other responsibilities or commitments, but to really be clear on not just, I guess, our business goals and our strategies, but what our social commitments are. Like most organizations now have pretty robust ESG frameworks and, really take seriously being good corporate citizens, particularly with environmental footprint and social, EDI. But I think really starting with that clear business perspective of the social, ethical, environmental commitments and responsibilities, and really taking that into account quite deliberately as we start to design our AI frameworks and strategies would be really important. So we don't leave it to chance, right? I think we need to bring it right in up front as part of our key business perspective and kind of asking those, I would say, the questions of the moment of, what matters to us and how we're going to use these tools to advance that work and not leave it to chance.
Yeah, and I think like you said, doing that up front and getting it so it's tied into what you already have, or if you
Yeah.
don't, just making sure that leaders across the business are involved and engaged, and that uh, we're doing this upfront work so we can really understand from a current state perspective, where are we? Where are the gaps?
Right.
Where are we trying to go, but how do we get there in a safe, mindful, and ethical way? So I think a great
Mhm.
a great question for
Yeah.
sure.
And
So
maybe one more thing, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I know I was guilty of this initially, like almost panicking that this is so urgent and we're behind and it's a blazing 911. So I think that kind of thinking can also just lead to forging ahead and maybe overlooking some really important, ethical concerns. I think just again, taking the time and asking the right questions is so important before we just get into reactive mode.
indeed. And before we wrap up, Rhonda, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone who's joined us today. We're going to make the recording available to everyone. But before we wrap up, Rhonda, are there any final thoughts or anything you'd love to share with the group?
Well, I want to say thank you to you for having me. It's been a very stimulating conversation. I'm certainly eager to hear what people think. And feel free if anyone wants to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn. But I think we've covered it all. I think the key message is probably that the AI powered organization is coming. We need to learn about it, shape it, lead the way, not forget our good leadership and change skills. Involve our people and really step up, and ask those questions that the moment demands of us and embrace it from a learning perspective. That would be, and some people say, it's going to be more difficult to lead. I know a lot of leaders who are we're often lamenting about how much harder it is to lead as the years go by. But I think, will it make it harder to lead? Maybe. But I also think there's tons of opportunities here and lots of excitement. And, again, if we start and prepare and really use our good fundamental skills, I think it can be a really great opportunity, as you say, to create a more human-centered and humanized workplace and help us achieve our worthy goals. So I do think I'm kind of on the optimistic side with it.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think there are opportunities for leaders. There's opportunities to be innovative, to be courageous, to
Yeah,
really embrace this change. I think it's a great opportunity as well for us when we think of change and transformation from an AI perspective, is moving away from some of those templates that just frustrate leaders, and moving towards better tools, better insights,
yeah,
better data,
yeah,
so that we can make informed decisions, but we can do it in a way that is collaborative and
right.
across different silos.
Yeah,
Well, actually breaking down some of those
totally.
silos. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rhonda. I just wanted to mention to everyone on December 3rd. So just next week, somehow it's December. We've got another webinar that's been scheduled. It's around leading with courage. So embracing AI to innovate and transform your organization. And we've got an esteemed guest, Ernesto from SANA, that's going to be leading that discussion. So hopefully you can join us. And I want to thank everyone for your engagement today, for your comments in the chat. Again, we'll get the recording out. We really appreciate you joining us, and just a special thank you to Rhonda for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your passion. I've loved the conversation, and I'm sure others have really taken away so much from your thought leadership. So thank you, and thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate being here with you, and thanks to everyone for joining. Yeah, it's been an honor.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.